my input. So there is in the participants window, if you go there to the window, you can indicate with the raised hand that you have a question. So if you use that moment that you want to have a question, that's the easier way to. So if you go to the participants window, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see an icon for participants. If you click in that one, you will see on the right-hand side of your screen the list of all participants, and at the bottom of that there is an icon for raising your hand. So if you have a question, please use that icon, and then I can see who wants to have questions. No one wants to start? So maybe we could have a very short round of introductions. I see that we are not with so many people. So maybe you would like just to introduce yourself, and I will go in the order of the participants, and you just introduce yourself and tell us what is your background and what you would like to get from this session. I'm skipping the hosts and I'm moving to Atli Gomandani. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Atli Gomandani. I'm currently in Windhoek, Namibia. Currently I am joining the United Nations University Institute in Macau, where I'm a postdoc research fellow. My main research areas are IoT, security, and artificial intelligence. That's the main focus areas that I've been working on in particular. The reason why I really enrolled for this clinic is to try and get more insights into the research area in AI in particular, and especially from maybe if you have any inputs from the policy side and the ethical angles around artificial intelligence. Yes.
Yeah. Have you attended my presentation just an hour ago?
I was on another session because I'm currently joining Macau, so I'm on my orientation week, so it clashed with my orientation. That's why I missed it. I just finished. Yes.
So I will repeat a few things then. Thank you very much. And Daniel Ishaku? Daniel, you would like to say anything from yourself? If we just move it, you feel free not to answer if you don't want. Gleifer Vaz Alves, you would like to say something?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm talking from Brazil. I'm a computer science professor here at Federal University, and I just was able to see the end of your talk because the email unfortunately was to my spam folder, and then I took a while to sort things out. And I work with agents and formal verification, and so I'm quite interesting to get to know a little bit about responsible AI and how, for example, program intelligent agents with some sort of ethical layer, and how could they try to solve some issues related, especially with autonomous cars. That I also work a little bit with this topic, and this is my main goal with this research clinic and these talks.
Thank you. Now we have yes, thank you. Marta, I'm Body. You would like to say anything? Introduce yourself. Marta? Okay, then we move to Meow. Marta, you would like to say something?
No, I wouldn't. I'm just listening. I'm Marta from Namibia.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Meow Meow,
Oh,
would you like to say something? Yep.
yes, I think I'm muted. Am I?
Now you are okay. Now we are listening to you.
Ah, okay. It's such a pleasure to join this group. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. So I'm a researcher and assistant professor in the field of law. So my current interest is to look at the intersections between law and technology and society in terms of policies as well as decision making. This involves a wide array of different topics, and I'm sorry I have missed your talk, which is really unfortunate. And I am very looking forward to hear more about your insight and your observation in any kind of policy making or social governance or legal related topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Shuren. You have to unmute yourself if you want to say something. Okay, then we move to Teng. Teng, would you like to say something?
Hi, Professor. Can you hear me?
Aye, yes, we can.
I'm a student from China. Nice to meet you. And I just want to hear some question and answers from others. I don't have any specific question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tommy T, I see you are in a very nice tropical beach. Anything you'd like to say? Then Zhao Ming.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I want to know about more 5G and AI interaction.
5G, okay. That's not really my expertise, but we can see what we can talk about that. Thank you. But AI, we can definitely talk. Zhao Ming, please.
Hello, Professor.
Yes, hello?
Yes, sorry for joining in late. I had a bit of network issues. I am a student of social work and medical psychiatry with a background in computers.
Okay, and
I thought it would be a good avenue to improve my knowledge and also get to. Sorry?
Where are you from?
I am from Nigeria, but I'm currently studying in India. So right now I'm in India.
Okay, thank you. So I think now we can go back to Zhao Ming.
Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for your wonderful speech at 4 p.m. I'm an assistant professor from School of Chinese. My research areas includes Chinese linguistics and Mingqing Chinese. I think it is a good chance to learn from you, and I hope I can make progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know if I added everybody. If anyone still wants to introduce himself or herself, please go on. Okay, then we continue. Please, I see everybody's having the sound off. That is good because that makes the sound for everybody better too. But if you have a question, please either use that raise hand sign or interrupt me by unmuting your microphone. So I see that there is a general interest in AI policy and how AI interacts with many other types of societal issues like law or like smart cities or other infrastructures. Like I told already this morning in the talk, but which is at the basis of my research, one thing which we firstly have to realize when we are talking about AI with respect to policy or to impact, it's very important to understand that yes, AI is a computer science technology, is a technology which enables us to develop all types of systems which are able to process information and reach some decisions based on that information or that data. But in a sense, the AI technology itself is only one part of the whole AI infrastructure. AI is a social technical issue, is an issue which includes the technology, but maybe even more important than technology, we have to take into account the organizations, the people and the institutions which are around AI, which take care of the development, of the use, of the policies, of the deployment, and the ways that this social part of AI is dealing with a lot of the more societal and impact questions is what at the end of the day will affect us the most. So it's not just about a piece of software which is able to understand or to analyze patterns, to do pattern matching, to take decisions, to make some predictions. That's only in a sense a small part of the whole story. How are we using these systems? When are we using these systems? What type of data and of information are we feeding to these systems, and what kind of data are we using to train these systems? Who is doing that? How is it being done? And what type of regulations and of societal infrastructures are put in place in order to enable or not this technology to be used? That's kind of the most important when we are talking about responsibility or ethics in AI. Having said that, so AI is not just a technology, is social technical, and therefore we need to address AI from a multidisciplinary way. It's not, I do have a background in computer science. I'm an engineer, but like many of you seem to be. But as an engineer, the main drive that many of us have is to develop technology. In this case, and especially looking at the potential impacts of AI, it's not just about developing the technology, but at the same time we need to have an informed discussion with all other disciplines about what is this technology is supposed to be doing, when is it supposed to do something, and how are we going to regulate or to address the questions of responsibility and accountability. I don't know if there are any more questions at this moment or issues. So then let's maybe give an example. And some of you refer to self-driving cars, let's start with a self-driving car as an example. The self-driving car includes a lot of technology. Some of that technology is AI technology. Most of it is not AI technology. The self-driving car is still a car like any other car, but it has this capability to sense its environment and make decisions in terms of its plan or its driving plans based on what it senses. So it should be able to sense what's happening directly in front of itself and then take decisions to stop or go depending whether the road is free or not. It should also be able to take a bit more long-term decisions in terms of making the plan for the whole driving. So if you go into the car and you want to go from your office to your home, the car should be able to make the plan on how to get from your office to your home, which roads to take, where to turn, whether to go in the freeway, which you might have to pay a toll, or go not in the freeway, but that takes longer. So all these type of decisions are decisions that we can implement in terms of AI algorithms. There is a lot of work being done on that. there is a lot of work on optimizing this type of algorithms. And like you all know, there is also a lot of discussions and works about what should the car be doing in terms of when some unexpected situations come, and how those potentially those decisions that the car is going to take might be considered ethical decisions. And you might, all of you, have heard about this moral machine and trolley problems issues. If someone doesn't know about trolley problems or the moral machine, please let me know and I can explain. Otherwise, I continue. Do you all know about trolley problems and the moral machine? Feel free to say no. I can explain, okay. So the trolley problem is a very old philosophical discussion. It's always meant to be a way for philosophers to think about complex dilemmas. It's never meant to be a way to develop cars, and it goes like this. In the original version, there is an electric train which is going in a rail, and the rail is going to split in two sides in a fork, just a bit in front of the train, and you are standing outside the train next to a place where you can use a lever to stop the train. And you see, as external to the train, you see that if the train keeps going straight as it was planned to go, it will kill 5 people who are standing there in the rail, and somehow those people cannot move, so they are stuck to the rail, and the train will go over those 5 people. If you decide to change the direction of the train, so to use that lever to change the direction of the train will go to another rail, but in that rail there is one person stuck to the rail. So now it's the decision for you, and that's the philosophical question, the dilemma here. What should you do? Should you let the train do whatever it wants to do and kill those, or whatever, not whatever it wants to do, but whatever it's planned to do, and kill those 5 people in the rail? Or should you move the lever and change the direction of the train and make the train, by your decision, go to kill 1 person? This has been translated, let's say, transformed into discussions about self-driving cars. So if the self-driving car is going in a certain direction in which it might cause harm to some people, and if it goes to the side or if it takes another direction, will still cause harm to others, what should be the decision of that car? That's been, in the last few years, a big discussion on that. So there are a few issues here. Like I say, the first one is that this type of stories are not meant as engineering problems. They are meant as philosophical discussions. So it's not so much, it's not a recipe to design cars. It is a way for people to think about their own dilemmas and to understand what should we do. From philosophy again, there are many possible answers to this dilemma. If you take a utilitarian perspective, which is one of the many schools within ethical philosophy, you will count, or you will try to maximize the number of lives. So in a utilitarian perspective, the solution to this problem would be to move the lever and kill 1 person, because killing 1 person is better than killing 5 persons, according to this theory. Then there are theories of human rights and human values, which says that we cannot compare the value of a life. So each life is valuable in itself, and it's not just because you happen to be counted together with other lives that all of a sudden your life is more or less important. So in those cases it would be much more difficult to take the decision. And then there are also other types of philosophy, and in particular the philosophy of Kant, Immanuel Kant, which says that it's not so much about the results of your actions, so whether you kill 5 people or 1 people in this case, but is about the actions and the motives that you have for the actions that you take. In that case, and it's again a very trying to make a very complex story a bit simple, the decision according to the Kantian theory would be to let the train keep its course, because if you actively interfere in the activity of the train, you will become morally responsible for what the train does. Whereas if you don't interfere, you are not morally responsible. Of course, again, here there are all kinds of questions and all kinds of objections, but the point is to tell you that there is not one right way to solve these problems. And also, like I say, these are not engineering problems, are philosophical problems. So when we go back to the self-driving cars and whether or not we are going to build self-driving cars that should have the capability to take this type of decisions, we have to be very, very careful about what do we mean. It is not an engineering decision, it's a problem, a dilemma to think about. That's how the philosophers decided it. It's also something which cannot be solved in one way that will always satisfy everybody. So there are any way that you solve or try to solve this problem, there will be objections about what the solution will be. And that's what makes this type of dilemmas very complex. So if you are going to build the car to solve this problem in a certain way, then the decision is not so much about what the car does or not, but is very much about what the manufacturer finds important. Will the manufacturer solve the problem in a way that it will prioritize the lives of the people inside the car, or will solve it in a way that it will prioritize the people in the road? And that's one of the discussions that has to be done. And if the manufacturer of the car decides one way or another, then the responsibility is not for the car. The car is just a piece of software, is the plastic and metal and the rubber that implements the decision of the manufacturer. So again, here the car is out of the issue. Another one which has to be considered is the responsibility of the government. If the government really is concerned about this type of decisions and whether it will be good for cars to be taking this type of decisions, then governments have a very easy way to solve it. They can just forbid that there are self-driving cars in our roads. Or they can make sure that if there are self-driving cars, there are in roads or in tunnels or whatever, where never it's possible to have a person there, so that the problem never arises. So again, here the responsibility is not with the car, is with the decisions that the governments take in order to allow or not for this technology to be put there. And then again, we can continue this story longer, and the responsibility also for the people which are the passengers of this car. If you knowingly step into a car that you know that might be going to take this type of decisions, you are also part of the responsibility because you accept to be part of this issue. So, like I say, the main thing on this type of issues is not so much how we design the car, but it's why are we designing the car in a certain way, who is taking those decisions, and what are the bases for those decisions. And again, all these questions are questions which are not engineering questions, but they are societal and they are legal and they are philosophical questions. So again, we go back to the realization that AI is much more than just the technology that we are building. Any questions or further issues on this?
Can I ask a broader question, if you can?
Yes.
Yes. So yes. I would like to ask a question which I have been reading some of the material recently regarding artificial intelligence as well as, for example, algorithm-based decision making. Mm-hmm. So some of the recent literature which I have come across, at least in the field of law and social policy, I think Many of them point to one of the very central dilemma in the recent experiment with the decision making, where artificial intelligence or algorithm, which is algorithms or at the current stage development of artificial intelligence, they do not really represent a more neutral or advanced or more precise form of intelligence. They are representation or replication or even emulation of existing human decisions, which have a lot of weakness, bias, and different kind of flaws. So that makes me think all the time, what if that is the real the situation? So how does that speak to us who are doing the research in the field? And if algorithm is fundamentally flawed and inherently not perfect, so why do we want to apply them in our decision making?
Why are we doing this? Yeah, very good question. So it's the algorithms are not, depends what you are defining by the flaw of the algorithm. Mathematically, the algorithms that we are using are not flawed. They are correct, or in most cases. Of course, we can build some bugs on it, but in theory, we can build correct algorithms, and we have built many correct algorithms. What we are doing nowadays, and that is the newest approach to AI, which has started a few, 8 to 10 years ago, which is this data-based and data-centered approach to AI. What we are doing, we are building technology, which is able to analyze huge amounts of data, and then based on that analysis, identify patterns in the data. And with those patterns, then we can start making decisions. We can start seeing things which occur in regular ways or that are correlated with each other, and then decisions can start being made. What are the issues here? The first one is that data, by definition, is always about the past. We don't have data about the future, and we also don't have data about the direct present. It's always a lag. Even if it's only a microsecond, data is always about things that happened. It's never about things that are going to happen. Also, data is always an abstraction of reality. We are never able to collect the full complexity of reality. We choose to collect data about speed, about weights, about sizes, about directions, about illnesses, about all kinds of things, but we choose the parameters which we are collecting data about. In many cases, we don't really choose to collect data about the color of the socks of the subject that we are looking at, because the color of the socks is not something which we find important. So therefore, we are not able never to make any predictions in terms of colors of socks, if that would be important. Maybe in the fashion industry they do that. But if we are talking about illnesses or about self-driving cars, those are kind of things which are not really relevant. So data is about the past. Data is selected mostly by people to decide which data are we collecting and which data we are not collecting. Also, in many cases, the data that we have available for AI is data that has been collected for other purposes. And putting all these things together means that fundamentally data is biased. It's biased because some selection was decided on what we are going to collect or not. Is biased because the people who are tagging or who are giving extra meta information about what's there are also trained to see things in a different way, and they will see the things that they are trained for. And indeed, then we get biased data, which in a sense is what the reality is. We are all biased. We take decisions based on what we think is important, and each one of us thinks that different things are important, and therefore our decisions are biased towards what we find important. The issue is that we are using this type of systems to take decisions for a large part of the population, or potentially to make decisions for a large part of the population. So we are replicating the bias that were there in the data, because the data that we have is data about the past. So there are all these examples, like for instance about the recruitment system used by Amazon, which they developed a few years ago, a AI-based recruitment system, which then was seen to be biased against women. So they would more likely give a job to a man than to a woman, based on that AI system that they developed. It was not at all the technology or the software which was trying to be biased against women. What was happening there is that they were training that algorithm with the data they had from the past. And in the past, they had indeed made much more decisions about women, or about men, positive decisions about men than about women. So the system, in a sense, is just replicating what it sees there. And if we don't understand that, or if we accept or understand that the system is fallible and is replicating the patterns in data that we give it, then we have to be responsible for using or not this type of systems. In my presentation just here before, I gave some examples of adversarial attacks that we can do on data, which is modifying the data explicitly to try to trick the AI system. And those things go as far as if you put a sticker on a stop sign in the road, the AI system, the sensor of the car, will not see it anymore as a stop system. But can you please turn off the sound, because it gets a lot of echo in the back. If you all can, thank you. Can you turn off your microphones? Thank you. If we put this sticker on the stop sign and the sensor of the car all of a sudden starts not seeing it as a stop sign but as a go sign, then the responsibility is not so much the car which made that mistake, but it's again people, societies, who are taking the decisions by this type of systems as being 100% correct. So in these are the issues which we need to discuss, and it's not so much whether the algorithm is flawed or not, but in a sense we are flawed, because we are biased ourselves, and also because we tend to put too much trust in this type of systems.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
So first of all, apologies. I was late. Maybe you covered that.
No problem.
Because of the last minute change. So basically, we talk when we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk a lot about intelligence itself. But what happens to the consciousness, and what happens to the emotional intelligence?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, originally the whole origins of AI is about developing systems or developing models of human intelligence as a way to try to understand better what is intelligence of humans. So this is the whole origin, 60, 70 years ago. It's about, can we use artificial models to understand what is intelligence? So indeed, the systems and the whole field of research is about intelligence. Somehow, because it's about human intelligence, and humans are also conscious animals, we tend to mix those two things together. And we tend to have this idea that if we create machines who are more and more intelligent, they also automatically will become more conscious. There is nothing in reality or in science which says that more intelligence means more consciousness. And we can create machines, and your calculator, which you have on your telephone, is much more intelligent than you in terms of calculating square roots, for instance, but you will never consider that thing to be conscious. It not even knows that it knows how to calculate square roots. It only knows that, or it doesn't know nothing. It just does what you are asking it for. In many cases, all the systems that we are developing nowadays, which are often called narrow artificial intelligence, are extremely good in a certain topic, and they will be, but they are not intelligence in general. So a system which is able to identify cats in pictures, which is one of the examples which comes back again and again, and we are able to build systems who are very, very good at understanding, at identifying cats in pictures, or cancer cells in the X-rays, or sounds, or language, understand language, and so on. In a sense, those systems are not understanding language. They are not understanding cats. They are only making matching patterns in data. The system which is able to identify cats in pictures is never in the same system will never be able to tell you what is a cat. The meaning of a cat is not part of what the system can do. Also, the system will not be able to tell you that cats are animals, or that they reproduce, or that they eat, or that they have they make sounds, because nothing of that is in the technology that we give it. It's also because the system is good in a certain task, then we can train it again to be good in the second task, and we can train it again to be good in a fourth task, fifth, 10 tasks, and so on. But still, by being good in many different tasks, it still misses the capability to abstract from those tasks. So you have to, again, with the technology that we have now, we have to again and again train the system to another task. So if you train a system to play chess, the system will not be able by itself to start playing Go. You have to train it to play Go. So in a sense, we cannot really assume that consciousness comes because systems become more intelligent. They are kind of two directions, and by improving one direction, there is no guarantee that we are also improving in another direction. And in that, I'm not very concerned about this idea that all of a sudden AI will come over and take over the world and kill us, and I don't know, whatever other kind of stories that Hollywood tries to make us believe. Because the becoming intelligence is not something which means that you are also becoming conscious at the same time.
So thank you very much. That was really good. So I'm from an architectural and engineering background. I've been a researcher in artificial intelligence in architectural design for more than 10 years now. But a question that comes to my mind when we use, for example, generative design with artificial intelligence to enhance, optimize the design solutions, basically, how can, if there is no consciousness, if there's no link to the human, emotional intelligence, how can we rely on the decisions that we make by AI?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, and in a sense, we have to rely on what I say in the beginning, on this social technical system that AI, the technology, is a part of. So we have to rely also on the legal system around it. We have to rely on the organizational system around it, and on the people and the institutions that are regulating and defining the field.
So when we're talking about architectural design, we are talking about designing buildings that people are going to live in.
Yes.
So there's no organizational or society rule.
Yeah, there is.
It's just
of course, there is an organizational and a societal thing.
But my point of concern is about the people who live in those buildings rather than the rules.
But so as you are developing those buildings, you are shaping the way people live. So you are part of this social technical system. You or the organizations that do that. I'm not meaning you yourself, but the developers of those systems are shaping the way people are going to live. The countries or the cities in which you are building those systems are also part of the responsibility, because they are allowing or they are accepting or encouraging buildings to be designed in a certain way. And buildings, in a sense, have always been shaping our lives, whether they are intelligent or not. The fact that we build buildings, an example I often give is, if it's an office building, if we build it to be an open office concept, or you build it to be a closed office concept, it is shaping the way the organization works. The place where you put the coffee machine shapes the way the organization works. The way you, the colors you paint the walls, the light you give to all those things are shaping the organizations. And there are lots of studies in which shows that some colors are more effective for having more discussion or being more creative, and other colors less. There are a lot of work being done about open office space or closed office space. So the step of adding some intelligent sensors or intelligence technology to the building of the systems is not radically different approach, but it's just one more step in it shaping of the people who live in those environments. You are nudging them in one way or another. The size of the windows, all those things are things which nudge people to work in one way or another.
Okay. So, sorry, it's my last.
Yeah? No, let's continue.
Because I want to give space to others as well. So, in architecture, an architect then wants to design a building, make an emotional connection with the client to understand. Because when we're talking about people, a color, for example, red, might give you different vibes than it gives me, for example. Yeah. So what I've been using in my system, I developed a few systems using genetic algorithm for generative designs, for example. Yeah. I use machine learning for the machine to learn over time, but still it is not consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It is definitely not consciousness. I'm not saying that it's not useful to use machine learning. It's definitely very useful, and it's something which we can use. Often, one issue with this type of approaches is that we assume that there is one user, and that the user will have you try to understand how that user is interacting with the building or is interacting with the system. Often there are many more than one user, and if you are building an office building, for instance, you probably are interacting with the boss of the company instead of all the different employees that are going to go there. When you're building a home house for a family, you are interacting with the ones who are going to live there now, but you are not interacting with the generations to come, which will live there later on. So, in a sense, you are taking decisions together with the one specific type of stakeholder, of client, which will influence other ones indirectly from the decisions that you are taking. And it is good to, and it's useful to use machine learning algorithms to try to adapt as best as you can to the current reality. But again, the data that you have is not sufficient to understand future generations or future uses of your building. So we have to accept that there is a limit to what we can do with the use of artificial intelligence.
I think the point is to accept that it's going to be machines.
Yes, it's not a magic wand which will give us magical powers, and we have to accept that it's a technology. It's something which is useful, but it has its limitations, like anything else, and it's not solving all our problems, unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
Especially now, we would like to have something which would solve all our problems at the moment and get it done with it, and we can go back to our lives. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
That's human laziness.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
Would you mind me to ask another question? It's quite a broad question. I just wonder, what is your observation and what your thought about this recent really profound event of the COVID-19? Its change in our society, and also it's. I'm talking about this because I've seen news reports and comments regarding the technology as a tool of surveillance to the individual persons, and especially in countries which have a very tight control. So I just wonder what is the possible implication in this change for the future and many decades to come. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Indeed, a very important question. I did wrote a small blog about the impact of AI and of responsible AI and the COVID-19 situation. If you are interested to read it, it's in my LinkedIn page. Also, it's linked from my Twitter page, so you can find that out. But basically, what I think is that, yes, there are very many issues that we can use AI to support the solving the very complex situation which we are in at the moment with all of us around the world. So indeed, one of the main responsibilities that we have as developers and as designers of AI is to make sure that we employ AI when and for what it is useful. But at the same time, we have to realize that the fact that we are now in this awful crisis altogether doesn't mean that we can set apart fundamental issues like human rights and like principles and sustainability and privacy principles. So you see indeed all over the world, and not only in the more authoritarian regimes, but also in many democratic regimes, that governments at this moment are trying to make it easier for organizations to make data available or to track citizens in ways that are very much against all the principles of privacy and security, because then they say that the societal problems are too big and then we should put our individual principles apart. But in a sense, it's exactly because we are in a huge complex problem at the moment, we have to be even more careful than ever to take into account that we cannot really just forget human principles, human rights and so on. Also for now, for the solving the situation now, but also because if we put them aside now, it will be extremely difficult to go back to the situations that we have now. So if you open the bottle and you let the genie get out of the bottle, you can never put the genie back in the bottle. We have to be aware that there are many different cultures, many different situations, many different realities around the world, and that some solutions which might work in one place will not work in another place. Also that the policies that are being put around in different countries are different, not just because some ones are doing better or worse, but because each country or each region has different reality and different culture and different background, also different demographics. Italy has a much older population than other countries in Africa, for instance, and what we're seeing in Italy is also a lot of the result of the fact that people there tend to live with 3 generations in the same house, which here in the north of Europe, where I live in Sweden, it's something which hardly ever happens. So each country has its own problems. Each country has the right and the duty to deal with the problems to the best what they can, but it's very difficult to really, especially because things are happening very quickly, to try to replicate the solution or the approach that the country is taking into the other countries without taking into account these differences. So we do need to use AI for the best of our capabilities, but we cannot really forget that AI ethics, AI responsibility, and just normal human rights and human principles still hold, and especially hold in these times of crisis.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other issues? I see that there are a few hands raised. Gleifer and then Shuren. Please, Gleifer. And then I will call Shuren.
Hi, Virginia. I'd like to, if you could talk a little bit about regulations of AI. What's your opinion? What would be the pros and cons of having some, for example, the self-driving cars? If a company or the government decides to regulate the AI embedded in the autonomous cars, what could be the pros and cons, and what's your view about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think the most important thing with the regulation of AI is that we have to realize that there is not a one-size-fits-all. Different countries, different situations, different domains, different sectors will require different types of regulation. It's also something which we have to realize at the same time that AI is a very global technology, so that a lot of the systems that we are using in a certain country are systems that we are importing from other countries. But that means that a best way to approach regulation would be to define for a country or for a region what are the minimum thresholds of safety, of privacy, of responsibility that we want these systems to adhere to. How much are we willing the systems to do things based on certain level of privacy balancing with security? That each country has a different thing on that. In terms of self-driving cars, I think it's something which we cannot really implement once, all at once. We have to really give it a gradual type of implementation, maybe starting in certain areas or certain types of movements. For instance, here in Sweden, in the north, there are a lot of mining, and there is for a long time already a lot of self-driving mining machines. Why? Because first, the mine is by definition dangerous for people because you have to go there in the tunnels under the ground, which are usually not the best things. And if you can take the people out of the mine and replace them by autonomous vehicles, then it's much more safe because the autonomous vehicles will never encounter a person there. So in this type of very closed systems, it's easy to regulate and to test and to check what goes wrong with this with the self-driving cars. It's completely different than putting a self-driving car in the center of São Paulo or Rio or wherever you are living, because there the complexity of the traffic is much bigger than inside a mine in north of Sweden. So this type of things, it's what we really need to take into account. What are we solving with introducing self-driving vehicles? When? And what are the potential problems? And the balance between those two things is what needs to be taken into account in the regulations. And that applies for also other types of AI systems that maybe are less physical than self-driving cars. What are we solving? What are we adding as problems, and how do we balance these two things? And that's an answer which we cannot really have from, it's not an answer which can be global. It depends on the sector and depends also on the country, I think, and on the cultures. And I think that Shuren had also some questions, but I'm not seeing Shuren anymore.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, you are there, yeah.
You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. I'm a doctoral student in one of the WASP HS programs held by Jonas Invenson in the University of Gothenburg.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I have been reading your book recently, but there is a question that confused me a little bit.
Okay.
The current research interest is statistical learning and algorithms. But I'm going to work on the trust AI.
Yes.
We all know that most of the people who understand algorithms have no background in psychology or anthropology, and vice versa.
Yes.
Moreover, it is obvious that only relying on technical or mathematical things cannot resolve the current problems.
Yes.
So I think that's the reason why we want to set up the WASP HS project.
Yes,
so,
that's very much true. Yes.
Yeah. So how can we resolve this problem according to your experience? I think maybe your explanation give me a navigation for my future research. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So for the ones who don't know what WASP is, this is a very large program, funding program for AI research in Sweden, which has two branches, one on AI research and the other one on humanity and society impact. So one of the solutions to the issue is to really put both things together, to work together, technology, humanities and social science in the development of AI. Like I start saying at the beginning, AI is not engineering discipline. AI is social technical, is a multidisciplinary type of endeavor, a multidisciplinary science. So we really need to start working together. And of course, we cannot expect that every one of us is an expert in everything. But we really need to create the bridges and also create the methodologies and the processes by which we are able to work together with people of other disciplines. That we don't take AI ethics or AI regulation as a kind of a checklist after we develop the whole algorithm or a whole technique, and then at the end we go and check whether we fulfilled some boxes, some ethical boxes or not, but that we start already with the conversation about ethics and about responsibility before we even start developing our technologies, and having at all the times understanding the balance between what is the best and the most accurate type of algorithm that we can build, and at the same time understand that how that algorithm fares in terms of explainability or in terms of fairness or inclusion. So it's not either one or the other, but try to go with all the steps, all the aspects at the same time. And in a sense, the best AI is not the most accurate AI, is the most useful AI. And the most useful AI, and that's again a dilemma that we need to solve, is AI which is not only accurate and efficient, but it's also AI which is aligned with the principles and the needs and the possibilities of people, which provides some explanation, which guarantees that fairness and privacy and inclusion is taken into account, is AI that uses the most sustainable forms of computation. So we really have to put all these things together, and that is a puzzle which cannot be solved only by computer scientists. We really need to accept and to start developing the methods which enable us to work together with other disciplines.
Thank you very much, Virginia. I hope we can keep in touch if you have any.
I think so. I suppose if we ever manage to get out of our quarantines, there will be a course of WASP on which we are talking about ethics and AI in October. It was cancelled now.
Okay. Thank you, Virginia.
Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, I think that we are getting to the end of this time. I don't know who is hosting or coordinating this event. It's you, Maylin?
Yes.
Yes.
I think maybe it's time for you to finish this.
Yes, I think that it's probably time. I do have other meetings now, and I think that was supposed to finish now because it gives you the opportunity to go to the Q&A with Michael Betty, which is going to happen now. So it was my pleasure to talk to you all. If you have any further questions, please get in touch with me via email or Twitter or LinkedIn, and I will be happy to continue the discussion.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Virginia.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, Ding. Hello.
Hello.
I think Michael's meeting is in the same room, isn't it? So we should stay here.
No, Michael is another link.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.